Welcome everyone, Costin here with a discussion about Age of Empires 4 Civilization tier list. Which are the best civilizations and the worst civilizations in the game at this moment. Which are the strongest and the weakest civilizations in Age of Empires 4 as things stand right now. Now, of course, there are a couple of caveats to make as we're talking about this at this very moment. One of those is it's still early days, so people are still figuring things out. Relic is likely figuring things out, what they need to change, what they need to balance, and we're likely to get balance changes over the next couple of weeks, next couple of months that will significantly change the meta. But the way I'm looking at the meta right now, it certainly seems like it's a meta that's focused on getting as much of an early game advantage against your opponent as possible. So if you can get to Castle Age and you can spam knights and without too much of a risk, then you're going to be in a much stronger position than people who can't do that. Even if you're playing a civilization that has early knights, so feudal age knights, it's still worth getting to Castle Age because those units are just going to be so much better, and you get so many upgrades available that are going to strengthen your units. A civilization that can get to Castle Age quickly will crush a civilization that can't. A civilization that's struggling. A lot of people are spending too much time in feudal age right now, but I'm seeing more and more games, especially on the pro level, where they're figuring out, hey, let's not waste time in feudal age, let's go to castle age and then let's duke it out. Of course, there's always risk, but castle age pushes are nothing new in Age of Empires. Plenty of people are doing them in Age 2 with all the risks associated. I feel the risk in general in Age 4 is significantly reduced if you play your cards right. But some civilizations are much better at doing it than others. And that's where this list comes in. If you can get to Castle Age quickly, if you can pull off a Night Rush, Castle Age Night Rush, or Man-at-Arms, or whatever you want to do, well, your units are just going to be better than someone who's stuck in Feudal, in the vast majority of cases. Not every case, there is one exception to this rule, but in many cases, if you're pushing for Castle Age, you're going to have an advantage if you're doing it quickly and efficiently. But in order to do that, you need to focus on food, you need to focus on gold, you need to focus as little as possible on wood. Don't bother with wood. If you can go through the entirety of the Dark Age without gathering any wood, then you're in a pretty decent position. Focus on food, focus on gold. Now, with all that being said, and I am sorry for the footage, it's not the greatest in the world in this video, but with all that being said, which civilizations are the best? Well, I'm using the tier list that was made by Azidrongo, credit to him and the video he made on the subject, but as an S tier, I'm going to have to put the Rus. See, everyone has kind of same economy, right? You start with a certain number of villagers, you train more, you gather food with gold, right? Especially food and gold. The Rus do that, and then they get free gold on top of it by killing animals. That's the bounty system. So whenever you kill an animal, be it a sheep, a deer, a wolf, a boar, if you can manage it, you get gold. You get a gold bounty. But on top of that, it adds to your hunting bounty score. And once you reach a certain threshold of that score, you get a food gathering bonus. And your hunting lodges, your mills, as the Rus, generate gold at a certain interval. The higher your threshold, the higher your tier, if you will, with the hunting bounty, the more food you'll gather, and the more gold you'll generate from your hunting bounty lodges. But what does this mean in practice? Well, it means if you're playing at the Rus, you can advance to the Castle Age without having a single guy on gold, because your scout, your starting scout, can go out and kill deer. You collect some sheep, you send them to your scout center, and you go out and kill deer. You can also train scouts from your mills, from your hunting lodges. You do that. You build those next to trees because they generate gold depending on how many trees they have next to them. You build those next to trees. And you generate gold. Now, what does this mean for the Rus? It means they can get all the gold they need, or much of the gold that they need for the entirety of the Dark Age, maybe even Feudal Age, or much of the gold they need for Feudal Age if you're killing enough animals, and while having just as many villagers on food, and also getting the villagers on wood. So if you're playing any other civilization in this game, you have to, if you want to age up quickly, then you have to focus almost exclusively on food and gold with as little on wood as possible. As the Rus, you don't really have to do that. You still want to get some gold gatherers, but you don't need like 10 or 5 or anything like, you know, 2 gold gatherers and with a scout or 2 scouts killing animals, you will have enough gold to suit your needs. And that means, what that means really in practice is that the Rus are capable of having the strongest early game economy of any civilization in the game. They get free gold. Gold is the most difficult to acquire resource in the game. It's rare, there's only so many gold piles, but you get free gold. It's even crazier when you start looking at how things are later down the line. You have a landmark that can generate deer. So even if your opponent is griefing you or trying to stop you or slowing you down, they can't stop you. They can't stop you from killing animals. They can slow you down by killing some of the animals, but your scouts are better. You can train more. An enemy player is always going to be limited by the fact they only have 1 scout, and if they try and train more, well, they're not building a villager. You can build scouts from the hunting lodges. So you have, as Ozzy called it, agency. Now, I don't believe that you would be able to use that to really harass the enemy. You've got more important things to deal with, but you can use those scouts, kill animals around the map, kill deer, get sheep, kill wolves in particular. They are worth quite a bit in terms of your hunting bounty. And so the Rus have a very strong early game economy, but on top of that, they have feudal age knights, and that's critical because not only can you get to the castle age quickly, but you can also start training knights even before you get there. Get the castle age upgrade, get some other upgrades, and you're going to be able to do this faster than anyone else, at least the way things are right now. You're going to be able to do it with minimal risk. In fact, your feudal age landmark, one of your choices, is a fortress. So if your opponent's trying to be cute and trying to harass you, well, you can just pop down a fortress as your landmark, and what the hell is he going to do then? And the fact that you have free gold means you can focus more on wood, means you can get unit production running, means you can get barracks, stables, archer ranges, wherever you want. You have those choices without having to sacrifice in terms of your food collection or really your gold collection. That's the main advantage. That's the agency, if you will, of the Rus, that they have so much flexibility because of their very, very strong early game economy. Now, are there downsides to the Rus? Of course there are. I feel they don't have the strongest late game army or the strongest late game economy. They will always generate some gold from those hunting lodges, and it wouldn't surprise me to see some very long games, team games in particular, where the Rus just have an enormous amount of hunting lodges. But there is a limit, and there is a limit in terms of how effective their hunting is. Because yeah, getting 10 gold per animal is great early on, but later on it doesn't really matter that much. So it seems to me that the Rus are going to dominate a lot of short games, so it wouldn't surprise me if once we get statistics for win rates, that the Rus have like something like 60-70% win rate in games that are over even before, say, the castle age, before both opponents get to castle age, or like say 20 minutes to 15 minutes, and then just starts to go down from there because the effectiveness of their economic bonuses go down. Their military is also not necessarily the strongest. Yeah, they have the Streltsy, they have early cavalry, and they have decent cavalry as well. Their knights have more HP than anyone else, so they do have advantages, but it doesn't feel as strong as what some other civilizations have. So the Rus are certainly a civilization that dominates early game, but that's less strong later on. But it doesn't matter, really, because the civilization that can do well early game is going to dominate in most of the matches. It doesn't matter if it's 1v1 or team games. So that's why they earned the S ranking here on this list. Alongside them, the French. Now, the French are more balanced, if you will, across all their ages, from the Dark Age to Feudal Age to Castle Age to the Imperial Age. In the Dark Age, in the early game, they just train villagers faster. So when you're trying to get your economy up and running, being able to train villagers faster from the town center, starting with the 10% bonus in Dark Age, is a fairly significant benefit to your economy, because more villagers, more gatherers. But it's more than that. As I've said, you want to have to worry about wood as little as possible. With the Rus, you have to worry about wood because your hunting lodges cost double the wood of regular mills. With the French, it's exactly the opposite. Your mills, your lumber camps, and your mining camps cost half the wood. So what that means is you can go for the entirety of the Dark Age without having to bother with wood and still get all the buildings or most of the buildings that you need. If you can avoid having to put anyone on wood until the Feudal Age, that's a great situation to be in, because it means you get more gold gatherers, you can get more food gatherers, and you're building villagers faster. And your economic tech also is cheaper, so that means the French can get their economy going pretty quickly. It's not going to be as overpowered as the Rus, but overall, I feel the French are going to have a more long-term benefit than the Rus will. And then, and that's just the economic aspect, right? That early game advantage in particular. Later on, their military is incredibly powerful. So from a military standpoint, they get early knights just like the Rus, but their knights are the best in the game. They have the best heavy cavalry in the game. Their cavalry, you have an upgrade that regenerates their HP. You have, which makes them regenerate HP when out of combat. You have an upgrade that increases their charge damage, and you have other upgrades as well. You get melee upgrades for free with every age. Melee attack upgrades for free in every age. And on top of that, the best part, your royal knights, the French knights, they get the damage bonus after they've completed a charge. So with the French, you do a charge, which does more damage with an upgrade than anyone else. You do a charge, you also get the damage bonus. You're going to be able to wipe the floor with any enemy you encounter. They're quite scary when you see the French knights. And knights are capable of defeating any other unit one-on-one. And the French have everything that they need to get to the Castle Age, and by that point they already have like 6, maybe more knights by the point you're there. It can be quite a steamroll, but it doesn't end there. It's not that the French just have a one pony trick with their knights. No, they actually have a lot more to that. They have great crossbowmen, they have ranged armor, melee armor. With Pavis shields, they can get range armor. They also have melee armor upgrade, so they have great crossbowmen. But on top of that, they have probably the best artillery, or some of the best artillery in the game in the Imperial Age. So the French aren't just strong early on, they're strong all around. And crucially, they're very simple to play. Like if you've played Age 2, you'll feel right at home playing the French. The developers stated that the English were made for new players. But honestly, I don't see that much of a difference between, say, the build order or the playstyle, I guess you would say, between French and English, with, of course, the exception of the military. I feel like the English get rated better in terms of ease of play just because they can build a massive ranged army, and that's easier to manage than perhaps knights. But the French are very powerful, very easy to play, very simple to play. Keeping it simple is a benefit in its own right. Like with the Rus having to, micromanage the scouts and all that, you can do it. It's not too difficult, but it's also something to worry about. With the French, you just play normally and you're just better than most other people. And you get early knights, powerful artillery, and powerful crossbowmen. What's there not to like? You also get cheaper economic upgrades and some free blacksmith upgrades. So overall, a really strong civilization. And some people would put only the Rus on this tier list. Other people would only put the French. I feel both of them deserve a spot at the top of this list for different reasons. They play differently, very differently, but both are very strong in their own way. With that said, as an A tier, the Holy Roman Empire. Now, the Holy Roman Empire isn't special in terms of its military. Yeah, they have knights, they have these good men-at-arms with pretty strong upgrades, but infantry is not going to dominate the game in Age of Empires. It's going to be cavalry, artillery, and ranged units. And the HRE isn't really special in those departments. They have culverins, that's good, that's pretty good. But they feel lacking from a military perspective with the exception of their infantry, and infantry is just not going to dominate these games. They have the Landsknecht. The Landsknecht, which is a light infantry, which gets decimated by archers. The Landsknecht feels like an anti-infantry unit, but the problem is the infantry is likely not going to be the meta. You want to focus on infantry, get men-at-arms. They're your best unit. But here's the thing with the HRE. For all their issues in terms of, I guess, military options, and people have called them bland, and they kind of feel bland from a military perspective, absolutely. For all those issues, the HRE, the Holy Roman Empire, has the strongest economy in the game. The Rus may have a better early game economy, but as it peters off, the HRE gets a 40 to 50% economic bonus in every age. It starts at 4%, you can get the upgrade to increase it to 50% with their prelates. That's the caveat. You are reliant on your prelates, on your monks. which are vulnerable and easy to kill. And each monk can only handle 10 villagers. Now, that's still very beneficial. 40% benefit for each monk on 10 villagers. That's incredible. Or you can get the Aachen Chapel, which is your H2 landmark, one of your H2 landmark choices, which can do what the prelate does in a decently sized radius, which can be incredible dependent on how your resources are, how your initial resources are spread out. So if you could get your wood, your gold, your food at the same time, that would be amazing. I've only managed to do that in one game. I only got lucky with RNG in one game. So there is an RNG element in terms of how effective their early economy is going to be, how strong their early economy is going to be. But late game, late game, Castle Age, Feudal Age, Imperial Age, doesn't matter. They're going to have the strongest economic output in the entire game. If you can get relics with certain landmarks, if you can get relics in that landmark, you may have so much gold that you could potentially support an entire team. And even if you don't get relics, it doesn't matter because your overall economy is going to be so damn strong that you can sell all those resources you get for gold anyway. The HRE feel like the Goths in of Age of Empires 2. They don't have something like the Huscarl, but they do have the ability to produce an enormous amount of units because of their very strong economy. And even if you defeat one army, which may not be the easiest thing in the world because they still have better men-at-arms, they still have knights, decent knights and all that, and they can also get their prelates, their monks to inspire their military, in which case their military, if they're inspired, might actually be the strongest in the game. But there's always that caveat, you need the monks to inspire, and monks are vulnerable. But if they get that, they might be a steamroller from that perspective, and even if you defeat one wave, they're going to send another at you, and another, and another. That's the strength of the Holy Roman Empire. They just have an inexhaustible supply of units if you let them boom. They are scary, crazy even, in terms of how powerful they might become. The problem is that there's always risk, and they're fragile. Their monks are fragile. Their economy might be fragile. If you can kill, say, a prelate in the Dark Age of Holy Roman Empire player, then that's an enormous economic loss for them. So that's the issue. That's why they're not an S-tier civilization. They just don't have the military strength of, say, the French. They are somewhat lacking in terms of the early game strength of the Rus. And overall, they are dependent on a unit that's vulnerable to have their economic strength. But if they can get rolling, you won't be able to stop them. And alongside the Holy Roman Empire, I'm going to throw the English as an A-tier civilization. Why the English? They don't have any special economic bonuses. That's true, right? You look at the English economy, what do you see special? Not really, not all that much. But here's the thing with the English. Unlike every other civilization in the game. With other civilizations, if you go Castle Age quickly, and you focus on food and gold and exclude wood as much as possible, that's the best decision you can make. With the English, you can do that, or you can focus on food and wood, as little on gold as possible, spam longbowmen, which are trash unit, and win through that. Longbowmen in Age 4 are pretty scary. They're very difficult to deal with in large numbers. There's very few armies that can compete with that. The English had the best trash army in the entire game in all ages. They have the best feudal age army probably in the entire game. A mass of longbowmen will beat knights. Not early knights, knights. Plain and simple. Combine that with some spearmen, which you get for food and wood anyway, and you get the civilization that's very difficult to beat. Even when they're attacking you. If they're playing defense, it's even harder because they get an attack speed bonus from their structures. So the English can turtle up in a way very few other players can, and make themselves safe. And that's just early game. The English are also incredibly powerful late game. Their longbowmen getting insane when they get volley fire, and their keeps can train units. They can get the structure which produces one of each, with the exception of crossbowmen, but you get spearmen, men-at-arms, longbowmen, knight, and a trebuchet from that landmark for a significant price reduction. And you can get quite a few units going as the English for cheap. And your trebuchets also do a significant amount of AoE damage. So overall, the English have a very powerful trash army, have a very powerful siege army with trebuchets in the late game, are difficult for other civilizations to defeat. Mass artillery from the Chinese or the French may work, But keep in mind that artillery costs gold. The English can spam longbowmen for food and wood. That's their strength. They're the ultimate trash civilization in this game, and no one else can compete with them on that level. And they're also simple to play. They're the easiest to play according to the developers. That was the intent behind their design. They're easy to defend as, easy to build an army that can attack the enemy. You may, defeating an enemy may be difficult with just ranged units, but you can always get rams and destroy their town center and landmarks if you so desire. And you will probably want to get, you will probably want to focus on food and wood far more than any other civilization, and you can get away with that. The fact you can get away with that makes the English strong. The fact you're not necessarily at the disadvantage by focusing on food and wood, because it is a risk, right? You're risking something by not getting as much wood because it means you don't have unit production. That's the choice other civilizations have to make at the disadvantage with pros and cons. And with the English, it's not just the case that you have to play them as longbowmen. You have early men-at-arms if you so desire, or Vanguard men-at-arms. You have Dark Age men-at-arms. You could pull off Dark Age rushes as well. The English have an incredible amount of flexibility. That's how I feel about them. You can play them as a longbow civ, you can play them as an artillery civ, you can play them as a men-at-arms civ, and all of those have the potential of working very, very well. And they're easy to play, which also is a significant advantage in its own right. So those are the top 4 civilizations in the game, S tier, A tier. At B tier, it's got to be the Mongols. The Mongols have the potential late game to be very strong. But early game, they don't really get any real economic bonus or military bonus, with the exception of the fact that they don't need houses. Oh, and you can move your structures around. Oh yeah, that's great. Not really. The Mongols really suffer from that. They're supposed to be a steamroll civilization. They might become one late game, but early game, I feel they're going to struggle. If you're playing as the Mongols, I think the best thing you can do is possibly focus on horse archers, try and delay your opponent as much as you can, try and retain battlefield initiative, but you're going to be at the disadvantage against, say, the Rus, the French, even the HRE, or the English. Especially the English with their longbowmen, they're going to eat you for lunch if you try and do it with horse archers, so that wouldn't work against them. Because horse archers, Mangudai, are just a glass cannon, and that is a pretty big problem for the Mongols. As a civilization, they're just a glass cannon. They have a great deal of offensive potential, but they don't have any real defensive potential, and they don't really have much to show for it in terms of early economic potential. Later on, however, things can change, and this is the strength of the Mongols. This is why they're not utter rubbish. The Mongols get unique upgrades. Every single upgrade that they can get a unique version of it that's better. They need stone. Now, they gather stone in a unique way in that they put a shrine, an ovo, on top of stone pile that will generate stone for you. You can only have one of these, and there's no other way for you to get stone until the Imperial Age, until you get an upgrade in the Imperial Age, where if you burn buildings, you get stone for it. You already get other resources like food, wood, gold from burning buildings, but not completely destroying them, setting them on fire. But you can get an Imperial Age upgrade to get stone. With stone, with the stone cost, you can get those better upgrades. Those better upgrades, which apply to everything, like military upgrades, economic upgrades, means that if you get a good chunk of them, you may end up having the most powerful late-game economy and late-game military in Age of Empires 4. But it takes time. I'm not sure you would be able to compete with the Holy Roman Empire in the end game, to be clear on this, but you probably would have the best economy with the exception of the HRE. And the best military. Your units will be stronger than anyone else's units because you are just getting better armor, attack upgrades, all upgrades than they are. But you do have a timer on that. It takes time. So you're going to struggle early game, you're going to struggle mid game. And late game, for all those advantages that you might have, you still don't have defenses, so that's a problem. I feel the Mongols could dominate maybe late Castle Age, early Imperial Age if they play their cards right, but they're going to be at severe disadvantage getting there. And that's how I feel about them as a civilization at this very moment. They will struggle early on. They're a glass cannon civilization, but if they can get going, they might be nigh on unstoppable. But actually getting that steamroller going is going to be very difficult because there's nothing you can really do as a player. That's the thing. You are limited by time in terms of how long it's going to take you until you can really get going. But once you get going, you're going to be very difficult to beat just because of the strength of your military and economy. Because it's military and economic upgrades. And then alongside the Mongols as a B-tier civilization, the abbasids. A lot of people have a great view of the abbasids. They overestimate them. But I look at the abbasids and what do they have? Oh, they have some economic upgrades. Great! There are civilizations that have a much better economy. The Rus, the HRE, they have a bit much better economy than the abbasids do. Oh, they get camels. Okay, camels, which on one-on-one would lose to any knight in the game. Plain and simple. Camels, and even with similar numbers, they would still lose. Oh, they debuff knights and do extra damage to cavalry. Doesn't matter. They'll lose. They cost gold. They'll lose. They're not worth it. As a mainstay unit, as a frontline unit, as a support unit, you know, to support an army of, say, spearmen and archers, and this is what it feels like to me with the abbasids, that the developers built the civilization built around the idea that, oh, you're going to get archers, you're going to get spearmen, and you're going to get camels. Because those are the units for which you have unique upgrades. And here's the problem with that. That's all well and good. It's a trash army that can beat knights because the camels debuff the knights, the spearmen finish them off. That's all well and good, absolutely. But there's one civilization that can win a trash war much better than the abbasids can, and that's the English. So they're not even the kings of trash. They're not the kings of anything. It feels like they're trying to be the jacks of all trade. Oh, they have lancers, they have camels, they have some special camel upgrades, they have spearmen upgrades, archer upgrades, they have some economic upgrades. They get a bit of everything, really. They get some economic upgrades, but they're not as strong as other civilizations. They get some military upgrades, but they're not as strong as other civilizations, and that's the problem. Jack of all trades, master of none. And I feel their potential just isn't as high as with some other civilizations. Oh, you can get the 20% economic bonus if you build an enormous amount of structures. Okay, great. The HRE starts with a 40% economic bonus. Limited to 10 villagers per prelate, absolutely, so that is a limitation. But still a pretty damn good economic bonus compared to getting up to 20%. So there are issues that I see with the abbasids. I'm not saying they're horrible. I'm not saying they don't have any potential. They're just decent. They're just average, really. That's the thing. They're just average. The Mongols are weak early game, potentially strong late game. The HRE has a powerful economy. The English are the kings of trash. The abbasids just don't really have anything special going for them except their camels, and their camels aren't that great to begin with. So there you have the problem. Moving on, at the C rating, yes, a C rating for the Chinese. What's the problem with them? Well, the problem is their economy. It's just not that great. And their military requires time to build up. And therein lies the issue. They can build structures faster, so that's a bit of an advantage. They can get those tax collectors, but tax collectors are more of a late game benefit, not early game benefit. So the Chinese feel very lacking in terms of their economy, which will lead to them lacking in terms of their military. Their military also early on isn't anything special. It can become something special in the Imperial Age. Once you get those dynasties unlocked, once you get all those units unlocked, once you get Fire Lances, Ugnu, all that, once you get Nest of Bees, you probably have the strongest, or some of the strongest artillery with Nest of Bees in the game. You can wipe out entire armies, but the problem is the Chinese have a slow start, takes some time. They might have a powerful late game army, but they have to jump through hoops to actually get it. And that is annoying, and that's going to hold them back from my perspective. And that's their main issue. They're not lower. I would even rate them lower, but they do have the potential of having a strong Imperial Age army. Maybe not as strong as the Mongols, let's be clear, because they're kind of similar in that perspective. They start out weak, they get stronger later on. But they're maybe not as strong as the Mongols can become, but they can still have a lot of potential in terms from a military perspective as a civilization. And then dead last, and I guess it's appropriate that they're at the D level, the Delhi Sultanate. The Delhi Sultanate don't really have any early game bonus except the fact that they gather more from bushes. So do the abbasids, and the abbasids aren't great in spite of that fact. I mean, oh, a berry bush bonus, but you can't get the boar. It's a trade-off, right? And it ends up being worth it, but it's not a great civilization to have. Oh, you get free research, yes, but the duration of those, the time it takes to actually get that research done is so long, it's not worth it. It pays off maybe in the Imperial Age, like when you can get all the techs, you may save up to 10,000 gold if I'm being very generous on that. But up until that point, it really, really isn't worth it. Any other civilization can get to Castle Age pretty quickly and can get some research done. You may get all of it done eventually, but you're not going to match them in time, even if you get monks. And those monks, those scholars, do take gold. Even if you get the landmark, to reduce the gold cost of it, they're still going to cost you gold. And it's one thing to spend 100 gold on a prelate who buffs your economy by 40% on 10 villagers. It's another thing just to improve a research rate. In fact, one of the things I believe people have figured out is that economic upgrades, they're not as powerful as one might think. They're not necessarily worth rushing for because you're paying more than what you get. Long term, yeah, they do pay for themselves, absolutely, but short term, not really. You need to get the critical mass to really make them worth it. So the Delhi Sultanate have the slowest start of any civilization in the game. They don't have any real military bonuses. And what do they have going for them? Oh, their spearmen can build defenses. Okay, that's great. Let's see how you deal with the massive knights heading for you. Some people, like I've heard of some cases, people building walls, stopping the night rush. Okay, fair enough. Like the Delhi may become more powerful later on, especially Imperial Age. The only situation in which I see the Delhi playing any decent role, and not great, decent, is if you let them get to Imperial Age, they start cranking up elephants, and then they start steamrolling you. That's the only situation. But those elephants, they cost as much as a house. They're incredibly expensive. I mean, a town center actually is cheaper than any elephant, or they're about the same price, each of them, as a town center. That's insane, each war elephant. That's incredibly costly, and those resources other factions can put to better use and end up with stronger militaries. So the only trump card you have are the elephants. They're too expensive. They take too long. You don't have the economy to get to Castle Age in the first place where you can train the elephants. You don't have any ability to get there quickly. You're going to fall behind. You're going to struggle as a result of lack of bonuses, really. The only bonuses they have seem to be geared towards Imperial Age, and even then, they're not necessarily as good as what some other factions have. You want to talk about military bonuses or late-game bonuses? The Mongols probably have some of the best late-game bonuses. Or maybe the French with their powerful artillery. Or maybe even the English with volley fire. Like, there's plenty of factions that have late-game bonuses. Delhi are not special because of that. Free research, okay, it might save you 10,000 gold if in a very long game that lasts over an hour and drags on deep into the Imperial Age, might save you that. But early on, early game, mid-game, they're not going to be worth it. And I feel like the Delhi are going to have a very low win rate for early game, for short games and medium games. They're going to have a low win rate. They're probably going to have a better win rate in Imperial Age, but even then, I find it difficult to believe that they'll achieve a 50% win rate even in Imperial Age games. So they're not in a good position right now. I feel that they're the civilization that needs the most to work on. I feel like when I'm talking about these civilizations, the Rus may need a nerf, especially to their early game. Not late game, early game. Like, just the sheer benefit they get in the early game is incredible. The Rus may need a nerf in that, whereas the Delhi certainly need a buff. That's how I feel about this. Kostin here, signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications, and stay tuned for more.